Steve mentioned something about you were getting ready to talk about offering the unlimited.
Yeah, so like if people say, well, what's the difference between, like, audiophiles might not understand what limiting is. I didn't understand limiting until I got into production. As an audiophile, I did not know what limiting was. So I think we need to have some kind of explanation, like, all right, yes, it's coming from a digital file, but not just any digital file.
Right.
Kind of thing. Like, why are these digital files different? Why is this different from just printing, just a normal digital file to take? Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, once you sort of explain that, the astute will realize that is what is the main difference between me or Steve taking the unlimited file and making a tape copy versus somebody at home making a tape copy of their CD.
Yeah.
And the other thing that brings up is that in a way it's limiting, no pun intended, that I'm the only one, or maybe, other mastering engineers and artists that want to participate. You can't access these files unless you've had the unlimited mixes. Like, only the mastering guy has the unlimited final master.
Right.
That kind of recording, whether it's on digital or tape, would be the kind of recording that you would want to, like, have your system disappear and you're like at the original event.
Yeah.
Right. What I'm talking about is reel-to-reel guys that are like, okay, I've got these dark, noisy copies of, Count Basie and stuff, and I've got, the classical people in Canada doing arias, and I've got, I have one of the three kind of normal pop music titles available from the tape project guys. But what I really want is some jazz or rock or songwriter or something that sounds amazing that is on tape and I can't get it anywhere else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So the call of it is that it's a beautiful format in which to experience the music, especially if there's only one generation of it and it's been done in a very, dedicated, fastidious, mission-critical manner, with great, a great chain of electronics and somebody knows how to, what they're doing. Plus, this hopefully ever-expanding catalog includes, like real kind of production stuff.
Yeah, right.
The problem with digital is harder to explain, and that is that it has no inherent sound, unlike analog. And so if you don't do anything but use, some mic that the conventional wisdom is good, and you, use some decent converters and, you record your band, it just has no vibe. It's just super plain, super sterile, nothing happening. And so you have to have a different style of engineering, and you have to put all of the harmonic carbonation into it that, a 2-inch 24-track, a Neve console, and then going through the console 3 times, and then mixing to a 1/2 inch. Using the same practices of recording through all of that analog stuff and recording to the digital, they sound totally different just because the analog stuff has so much vibe. So what people have figured out to do now in the world of all digital, because now people don't even use consoles. Like, no one uses consoles. So the only time the signal is ever analog in the entire production process is the microphone, the mic preamplifier, and at the very end, if it was mastered in an analog format. It stays digital the entire time. So So what happened? The digital got a bad name because you have to engineer very specifically for it, and you have to work to put a lot of tone and vibe into it. So there's all these harmonic saturation generators and kind of de-accelerating, de-edging kind of programs and stuff. And I mean, I can make an all-digital recording sound completely analog. You would never know. It's warm and smooth and wide and deep and all that kind of stuff. But you have to work like a fiend, whereas I could do the exact same recording in the analog domain and do virtually nothing, and it's just baked in and it's going to sound cool. Right? So the problem with digital isn't that it's broken. It was in 1982, but in 2020, digital is about as perfect as it ever needs to be. It's an exact representation of the microphone signal. Right. But you have to have taste and engineering chops. There's no book of best practices. And so one reason why a lot of current pop stuff doesn't sound all that great is it's done by somebody who's 30, who grew up completely in the digital realm, that has no touchstone of how analog sounds. So they're not trying to make their digital recording sound analog. They're just leaving it. They're just creatively doing whatever they want, which is fine. But so it's a harder thing to sell because it's not a black and white deal. But digital sounds amazing if the engineering is very sympathetic to a certain sensibility. Right. And that's the bottom line, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was, I'm old, and my entire career as a recording engineer and producer and mixer was in the analog era, and I kind of shifted into mastering around the time that digital, completely took over. And at some point, I was doing a little mixing at home just from time to time, like Charlie stuff, like maybe 3 times a year I'd mix an album, but all the rest of the time I was just mastering. And at some point I thought, I need to at least just get like an analog. I need to get like an SSL compressor or maybe a couple of your 1176s. I need to have a couple of boxes to flavor this all completely in the computer, digital mix. And I went, well, hang on, let me just do a little reality check. And I pulled out, a CD of something I had done all analog, 25 years ago. And I compared to something I was just mixing at the time, and it sounded exactly the same. I had just manipulated the all-digital recording to sound the way I wanted it to sound, and it sounded exactly like an all-analog recording I did from 25 years ago. Wow. So, but that's because I have an inner curve that hates the issues that digital doesn't address. Like, it never changes the acceleration of an S or a T on a vocal. It never mellows out the crash of a cymbal. It never does all of the extreme amounts of built-in signal processing that just recording to tape and going to a console does, all the non-linearity. So you have to make the digital do that.
Right.
And that's why some of these all-digital audiophile recordings, not all of them, but why a lot of them are just boring as because they think they're being cool by being like real minimalist and real like audiophile kind of, okay, no EQ, no this and no that. You're asking for trouble for that because the digital has no vibe whatsoever. And the feed straight off a mic into some computer is going to sound like you're in the chair at the dentist's office or something. It's like